Hello and welcome to Beyond the Veil background information. This time it's another one in the cultural area, so we're going to talk about the culture of the Howling, which exists in the Vale. Last time, of course, we talked about the Scandinavian or Nordic Vale, so this and next month's one will be werewolf related, okay? It's called the Howling. It's a local pack of werewolves that get together during the moon and with pure bloods in control to ensure no one is hurt and the curse transitions safely. It requires acknowledgement by the local vampire authorities, so it can help all werewolves throughout their lives, teach, train, give legal representation, and stop them being seen as the lawless, lowest-ranked members of Vale society we portray them as. Quote from Malvolio Viper in the Viper King. I do apologise for my croaky voice. I've just gotten over about tonsillitis. Where all other beings of the Vale had natural councils and societies with set rules that integrated well under the obedience of the vampires. Whether purebred or cursed, the werewolf initially had no rules but to try and keep alive and stick to their pack. No matter what, they sought out the pack, and yet the pack was made to be just family, just blood without room for connection and violent towards strangers and neighbouring packs. This was exploited by the vampire overlords for sport and battle against their own neighbours, and then, when the days of the overlords ended and the Vale agents emerged, the other communities had already melded calmly into the Vale society, but the werewolves were loose and broken, lost whenever they turned, until the Howling was put into full Vale policy throughout Europe in the late 60s, and emerged to communities around the world of the wolf curse and its people. The origins of the Howling itself are actually quite bizarre and unique. It was in fact started by a group of werewolves in Greece that had lost their vampire master, but were getting through life as musicians. They were the leftovers of a big battle on Crete and moved to the mainland in hope of being picked up by the courts of other beings as entertainment. These males were purebreds and, yes, they were all male, their deep voices and astonishing dancing agility entertaining several until they were brought southward into the court of the Ottoman vampires of Istanbul's Vale. Here something very bizarre began to happen. Trapped in a building that was only for them to stay in, the males would turn under the moonlight, but, being purebred, would be let out to hunt humans for the entertainment of the master, except that they refused. Not driven by the instinct to hunt, but rather desiring to rebuild their pack and desperately needing a female to stabilise the family feel, the males would just spend all night howling. Their songs would resonate and lure in every other werewolf in the region. The area swarmed with them, and the males were able to gain freedom by the frustrated vampire overlord and released into the outskirts of the city. Here they could easily have turned on humans and hunted them, but the stray dogs in the area were better meals and better to place their instinctual rage and frustration on. They found this was particularly the case for the cursed werewolves that would join their pack during their shift. It was then that the leader of the group did something curious. He changed into a human, the curse attacked, but he pinned them down and they knew his scent. He then wrote the name of the street the pack hid within, and wrapped it around the makeshift bracelets on the cursed werewolves. When he did so, the humans came to him the next day, suddenly aware it wasn't a dream, and they were infected by this terrible curse, and so the musicians would soothe them and share knowledge on the curse. Soon they would meet up in the same place over and over until a generation passed, and 7 children of the singers came of age with a dream. They moved northward, back into mainland Europe, creating packs of purebred and cursed, teaching them to hunt anything but humans, and even laying down simple rules, arranging dates and encouraging them all to become friends. They began to break away from the old ideas of blood, instead taking away the need for aggression, so that attacks on humans lessened. There was less distress for the cursed, and, instead of a blue blood system like that of the vampires, the werewolves began to just link together for their strength and their abilities. But as they left these communities to mingle, the 7 entered into Europe at the crux of the reformation of the Vale, as the vampires' overlord nature was bashed in by werewolf rebellion. But this rebellion would not see werewolves as the heroes of it, rather just as reckless savages that were neither human nor beast and never Valelander. In this new system that developed, vampires still held power as the structure of counts and the noble circle dominated the politics and the money, but territory and jobs were not theirs to control. Beings could buy their own land, but here the werewolves held no rights unless they were a pack with a vampire's backing. So buying land was impossible, and later even getting secure agreements to rent shops and buy their wares was difficult. Had to produce and never earned the right profit for their work. Though if they had a vampire backing them, they could run the risk of being kept in cages for fighting or brought into society, but still be looked upon as a sideshow. The 7 knew that the Howling could do much more, and in their first stop-off point in Budapest, they held out inviting all the werewolves in the region to them, and then did something quite rare. The top of the group half shifted. He became a wolf standing on two legs like a human, and this ability meant he was higher ranked than any of the wolves that approached them. It was in this moment the Howling made its truest foundations. They made a pact with all they met to help them gain what they needed by being united, sharing their information, and looking out for each other and all the waifs and strays. The 6 other members found out too, and by luck, in each region they came to, there was always a vampire, whether high in the circle or in the middle, that saw their plight and wanted to aid them. Soon the Howling began to work as a sponsoring system, helping young werewolves get chances to study as doctors and other important positions within the Vale that lacked representation. They were kept out of banking, law and councils, but they began to spread the news and move around, spreading the ideals of the Howling to help each other and prevent aggressions. It was thanks to the ideals of the Howling that one group of werewolves migrating in the hope of having their own home stumbled into the realm of Count Theo Viper and were given just as much opportunity and an important ally. In secret, Theo was sending letters around the Vales to create a strong line of communication between the different Howlings and spread information on vampires they could talk to and places they could go to for help. It was this same system that would later be used by his son Tybalt to monitor and work to remove the secret werewolf fighting and put the werewolves into their Howlings and into a system that was starting to register the werewolves. It was indeed after the Second World War outside the Vale and the purest wars within that the Howlings stepped forward. With the Iron Wolf seemingly wiped out, the Howlings had worked to protect the cursed werewolves by making fake registrations into the pure blood packs to protect them. This sneaky system meant every werewolf was on record, and with the need for labour after the purist problem, the Howlings became the source and then began to write and lobby to their vampire councils for greater rights and to be considered as the werewolf representatives in the region and brought into council. It took almost 15 years of campaigning before the German Howling made a breakthrough in their binding with a group of hippie youngsters, including prominent young vampires, who were fighting for equality in the Vale, and through them they linked to Malvolio Viper, the Vampire King. You'll notice with a lot of mentions in Vale culture, the periods of the late 60s was when Malvolio Viper came to prominence and became involved in a lot of the situations within the Vale. This is because the Vampire King could push things into law without much battle, and so Malvolio, Theo's great-grandson, was eager for reform and not only pushed for the rights of werewolves but for snakes, spiders, humans and the wasters. His work with the Howling involved pushing into law that each country in the Vale had to have a separate werewolf council, the Pack, made up of the leaders of each Howling, which would be town to town and have at least a quarter of the Pack present in Vale Council. He even pushed through that all of the non-vampires chosen leaders per country could enter into the noble circle to witness Vampire Council and even push the notion of televised debates. This meant no more closed doors, and vampires were under pressure to start getting their act together. The Howling then began to press into getting their own legal representation, something that originally could only be provided by a vampire and later a shapeshifter. But through the changes in the Howling, getting into law school became a must, with the first Werewolf Academy being built and run in 1982 in Switzerland, 2 valleys over from the prestigious Vampire Academy. These places were run by the Howling and other species that could teach, but for the academy to work, the werewolves had to help gain funds to put members into the academy and keep it going, with alumni pledging money into funds too. This was aided greatly when the United Kingdom and Austria put forward werewolf diplomats for their countries into the German Vale, showing that werewolves could advance. The Howling, though, gained its greatest stride in 1989 when the Red Vale collapsed, and the chance to help werewolves in the Eastern Bloc were pushed forward by vampires eager to remove the demon threat, and huge amounts of money were put into the effort, as well as cooperation from the Vale agents. With this came a new system from the Howling, a set of 18 codes that all werewolves in the Vale must connect themselves to in order to protect the cursed, enchanted and purebloods of the Vale. 1. No human flesh must be consumed. 2. No human for sport or revenge may be hunted. 3. None may pass the curse. 4. None shall be abandoned. 5. We sing under the moon to call everyone in. 6. None but the wolves shall be present under the moon. 7. If newly cursed, then we shall protect them and their loves. 8. Never let one of us turn against the rules. 9. Each pack must have an alpha male and alpha female to be equal, or it is no pack. 10. Gender is equal, no gender stands above or below. 11. Mothers and children sit above all but the alpha. 12. The pack must never involve themselves with illegal trade. 13. The pack must heal the wounded who come to them and not turn them out. 14. The pack can be with whom they choose. 15. The pack can be whom they wish to be. 16. The pack will support one another, whether in money, wisdom, care, or love. 17. The pack is not written in or by blood. 18. The one to break his rogue and cast aside for the sake of the pack. These 18 fundamental points were revolutionary amongst a lot of beings, because it formed the basis of a constitution the werewolves could present as legal paperwork to deal with other pack members. The Howling's main job now is to provide a sense of grounding and foundation for werewolves around the world, and thanks to these codes, the development around the vampires in the Vale has allowed them to have their own sense of union that had never existed before, and has meant the oppression the werewolf is under has less power, as they are no longer just viewed as savage and wild, but organised in a species of the Vale. It must be said, though, there is still a lot of work the Howling have to do to implement their ideas in some regions, and changes in politics and the rise of the Metzger disease, return of the Iron Wolf, and linking to the Scandinavian Vale have put additional pressures onto them. But for having the backing of the Vampire King and many of the countries in the European Vale, as well as having total reign in the North American Vale, the Howling may eventually rival the Noble Circle, as it should always have. Yeah, that's enough for this one of the cultural aspects. Next month we're going to have a look at the Metzger Virus, which it'll be another short piece, but very interesting, I hope. Anyway, thank you. Bye.